Vikings, let's win the game.
Vikings fans, today is absolutely moving with the latest buzz. Reports behind the scenes say the team is in position to sign an all-pro receiver on a $90 million deal, and it does not stop there. There is real talk about bringing in a veteran to run the huddle. In the middle of all that, a franchise legend has already taken a hard stance against certain names, and now there is even a draft scenario floating around that could flip everything you think you know. The last story in this run could reshape the future of the team. But before we break down every detail, quick message that matters. Subscribe to the channel, it is free, and it helps this community grow in a big way. And drop your take in the comments. This space is collective, it is the fan base debating together with respect and passion. Alright, brace yourself because the market just opened a door I did not expect this early. A game-breaking wide receiver is suddenly free to sign right now. And when you connect that with what he has said in the past, you already know fans are going to dream big. The name is Tyreek Hill. Yes, that Tyreek Hill, the guy who has lit up defenses everywhere he has been. He also said years ago he grew up loving the Vikings, and it was not some casual, polite quote. He said it like a kid talking about a real dream. He imagined pulling on the purple and gold and running out of the tunnel. So tell me, he is available. Our offense already has a monster on the other side. How are we not going to imagine it? Now hold up, there is a serious layer here. Health. He is coming off a brutal knee injury. It included a dislocation and a torn ligament. He had surgery right after. And based on what he and his agent have said recently, the goal is to be back next season. But a goal is a goal. The field is a different story. That is why I can absolutely see a short deal. A prove-it deal, then a bigger conversation after. Even so, picture the damage with Tyreek lined up next to Justin Jefferson. Speed on one side, unreal polish on the other. No defense is sleeping on that. And then the question hits. What about the quarterback? Right now, we are still in that ongoing storyline of who is going to steady the ship. We are also watching how the team protects J.J. McCarthy's development. But that is exactly why a player like this changes the board. It attracts veterans, it builds confidence, it forces the offense to get cleaner and faster. And that can help the young guy too. Then comes the part that splits the fan base. If Hill arrives, what happens to Jordan Addison? Some fans will immediately say he becomes trade bait. You take picks, you patch another roster hole, and you move. Others will say it is crazy to give up a young talent. I land in the middle. Addison is good, but the off-field history is real, and it complicates the decision. The team has to choose where it wants to spend money and patience. Another thing, you cannot ignore the off-field noise around Hill. There are serious allegations in his personal life, and that matters in any franchise evaluation. The front office has to study everything closely. This is the Vikings, not the Wild West. We want to win, but we want to win the right way. In the end, I will say it plainly. If the health checks out and the locker room fit is right, this is a rare chance to turn an already strong offense into a weekly nightmare for opponents. And you only get this kind of Vikings fan read right here because we are not just daydreaming. We are weighing risk versus reward like people who want to defend the North back on top. Tell me in the comments, would you make this move with all these layers? Stay with me, because the last one today is the kind of story that splits fans right down the middle. Now let us get to the next one because it hits the quarterback plan directly and it might surprise a lot of people. I'm going to tell you, this second story looks simple on the surface. But when you place it next to what happened in 2025, it becomes the kind of decision that separates an organized season from a season that turns into chaos. The Vikings have one clear mission this offseason: fix the quarterback situation. And it is not just about finding a name. It is about finding the right type of guy so the season does not spiral again. And now an idea is making the rounds that, for a lot of people, might sound almost boring. It is not a star, it is not fireworks, but it might be exactly what this roster needs. The name is Jake Browning. He came out of Cincinnati. In 2025, he opened as Joe Burrow's backup. When Burrow went down in week 2 with a foot issue, Browning stepped in and took the wheel. There were games where he ran the offense with confidence. There was an early win that gave that team real hope, but then things went sideways. He made 5 appearances. He threw 6 touchdowns. He also tossed 8 interceptions. Too many forced balls. Too many late decisions. The kind of plays where you watch and think, you did not need to do that. But here's what I like to notice. Even with that stumble, he did not turn into the guy pouting. He was not complaining. He was not pointing fingers. Cincinnati brought in Joe Flacco, and Browning slid down the depth chart. He became the emergency option, and he still stayed ready. That says a lot about mindset and professionalism. And a good backup on a team trying to compete Has to have that, because when the pressure hits, that is the guy who comes in and keeps the roof from caving in. So why does this fit in Minnesota? Because we lived this movie in 2025. The team finished 9-8. It was third in the NFC North, and it looks fine on paper, but the start was a disaster. The Vikings opened 4-8. The offense stalled. Bad decisions stacked up, and once you lose control early, the season turns into chasing your own tail. Then you need 1,000 miracles in December. Nobody wants to live like that again. So I get the idea. Bring in a veteran who does not walk in acting like the owner of the franchise, but also someone who is not a traffic cone. A guy who can compete in practice, clean up details, and win a game if needed. At the same time, he lets J.J. McCarthy grow without being held hostage by urgency. Browning fits that lane. He has real game experience. He has played in pressure spots. He has been tested when the plan A fell apart, and the contract angle keeps this story alive. Browning heads into 2026 as a restricted free agent. That means it depends on what the Bengals do with the tender. If they do not lock it in quickly, a window opens for someone to make a move. And the Vikings, with a strong roster and a real need at quarterback, are a natural team to watch. I know some fans will roll their eyes because it is not flashy. I get it. But I'm going to be crystal clear. Championship teams are not built only with poster names. They are built with the right piece in the right spot. A reliable backup changes the mood of the locker room. It changes the game plan, and it gives peace of mind to the fan who lives and breathes Vikings football every single day. Now imagine that happening while the front office still hunts for a stronger option above it. That becomes a real chessboard, and that is where things heat up, because the next story is about how much the league is looking at our young quarterback and saying, you cannot wait much longer. Now it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Up to this point, we were talking about possibilities, the market, reinforcements, fine-tuning. But this story hits the heart of the entire plan, and it is not an exaggeration. It is a heavy debate about the future of the most important position on the team. The name at the center of it all is J.J. McCarthy. After only a handful of starts in 2025, there are already national voices saying the Vikings should move on as fast as possible. The comment that grabbed the most attention came from Derek Klassen at The Athletic. He basically said he does not find the McCarthy situation that interesting, and if he were Minnesota, he would be trying to get out of it quickly. And you take a breath, because moving on from a quarterback after 10 games sounds insane. That is where another layer of the conversation comes in. Robert Mays on the same show said something that hit hard. He said he does not have much faith in what he has seen so far, but he also acknowledged that giving up on a young quarterback that early is extreme. Still, he made one thing clear. The Vikings cannot waste another season. They cannot. And that is what makes this so heavy. In 2025, the team missed the playoffs. Again, you have that feeling of a strong roster, a defense competing, and an offense with weapons. Yet nothing settles at the center. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold is lifting a trophy somewhere else. That stings. It really does. And I will say it clearly. McCarthy flashed. There were gorgeous plays. There were throws into tight windows that made you jump off the couch. But there were stretches of mistakes too. Forced interceptions, slow reads, balls that did not feed the people who needed to be fed. And when you have Justin Jefferson finishing a full season with production below his normal standard, something is off. You cannot ignore it. The debate is simple but brutal. Do you bring in a quarterback who is just a safety net? Do you bring in someone who can truly challenge for the job? Or do you go bigger and sign a guy who walks in as the clear starter with no debate? Every choice sends a message to the locker room and to McCarthy himself. And as if the outside pressure was not enough, a purple and gold legend stepped right into the conversation. John Randall made it clear he does not want to see certain veterans coming back. He mentioned names like Derek Carr and Kirk Cousins, and he said, with no hesitation, he wants more. He wants someone who is more than a guy who just manages the offense. That matters, because when a Hall of Famer talks, fans listen. I am torn, because it is scary to burn a talent too early. But it is also scary to stick with it out of pride and lose another competitive year. And you only get this raw Vikings fan read right here from people who lives and breathes Vikings football, because we are not choosing sides on emotion. We are thinking about January, not September. And I want your take. Do you give McCarthy one full year, or do you bring real competition into training camp right now? Hit me in the comments, because the next story pushes this even further and brings a strong opinion straight from someone who helped build this franchise. I am coming into this one with a bitter feeling. Because nostalgia hits, I get it. We remember big moments, big games, and leadership in the huddle. But the Vikings cannot live on memories. And in this story, the guy pulling the team back to reality is someone who knows exactly what it means to carry this shield. The name is John Randall, pure legend, a respected voice, and he was direct. He does not want the team betting on Kirk Cousins again, and he is not a fan of the Derek Carr idea either, especially with the whole retirement and unretirement chatter. For Randall, that is not the road to where fans want to go. And then he hit the nerve that every fan feels, the postseason. He basically said, "We have been down that road, not enough playoff success, a lot of nice talk. And when January arrives, nothing changes." He was not trying to disrespect anyone. He said it because the standard for the Vikings has to be higher, and I respect that. Now, if you look at it coldly, you understand why those names keep showing up. McCarthy's first year as a starter was full of stumbles. Mistakes happened. Fumbles happened. Interceptions happened. There were games where the offense looked heavy, stuck, out of rhythm, and when that happens, the NFL's first reaction is, bring in a veteran. But Randall's point is that not every veteran solves it. Some just keep you stuck in the middle. That endless 9 and 8. That constant maybe. And fans are tired of maybe. And I will be clear, I do not have anger toward Cousins. I have fatigue. Fatigue from watching a strong team and feeling like it was missing that extra gear when it mattered most. And with Carr, I see a similar risk. He might organize the offense on some Sundays. He might prevent a disaster. But how far does he take you? That is the question you have to ask before you spend money and commitment. So what is left? 2 clear lanes. Either you commit to McCarthy's development with the right mentor type, a guy who helps but does not walk in like the owner, or you bring real competition, but with someone who has a higher ceiling and more playmaking juice. You cannot sign a name just to calm headlines. It has to fit. And there is another factor, the locker room. When a Hall of Famer speaks, the players hear it too. The fans in purple and gold hear it. The front office hears it. And that creates pressure, because if you sign exactly what a legend said not to sign, you are challenging a huge piece of the franchise's emotion. It is not impossible, but you better have conviction, and you better have a plan. As an older fan who has seen too many cycles, I want the Vikings to show courage. And courage is not only chasing a big name, courage is choosing the right path, even if it is unpopular for a week. And that is why the next story lands like this. Okay, so what is the plan B? Because there is a mock draft out there saying Minnesota might go quarterback again, and that makes this conversation real serious. All right, now this turns into the kind of debate you hear in any Minnesota bar, because this is not only about drafting a player, it is about admitting out loud that the Vikings might have the clock ticking at quarterback. And when a mock draft puts that scenario on the table, fans feel it immediately. The name that popped up as a possible target is Carson Beck. The idea in that mock draft goes like this. The Vikings would not want to spend their top pick on a quarterback in a class that does not feel great at the very top. So instead of forcing it in the first round, they would look at that middle tier group, a name with a wide range of outcomes. He could become a steady backup for years. He could grow if he lands in the right spot. And Beck becomes a calculated swing, not a savior. And when I look at it, I get the logic. Because yes, the Vikings roster is good. There are offensive weapons. There is a defense that competes. And there is a coaching structure in place. But without stability at quarterback, everything turns into sand. We saw that in 2025. The team finished 9 and 8, but it was the kind of roller coaster that drains fans. And the biggest point is this. The Vikings chose to move forward with J.J. McCarthy and let other options go. If that does not click fast, the front office needs an alternative plan ready to go. And I will say it clearly. I still believe McCarthy's ceiling is higher than Beck's. When McCarthy is right, he looks like someone who can carry a game in a big moment. Beck does not have that aura right now, but McCarthy's issue was consistency, and consistency is what defines NFL careers. There were weeks he looked locked in, there were weeks he looked lost, and with an offense that has Justin Jefferson, that cannot happen. You cannot watch Jefferson play a full season and finish below his normal standard and say, it is fine. It is not. The mock draft description of Beck is that he plays better when things are clean. He plays better when pressure is not collapsing right in his face. And if you think about it, Minnesota can offer that if the offensive line holds up and the playbook stays tight. At minimum, he becomes insurance so the team is not empty-handed if McCarthy wobbles again. And you see why the franchise thinks that way. It is pragmatism. It is fear of repeating the same movie. But the emotional side of the fan base shows up fast. Because drafting a quarterback even in the middle rounds sends a message. It is like the front office is saying, we believe in you, but not completely. And that hits the locker room. It hits confidence. It hits the season's storyline. And here is the real question. Do the Vikings want real competition for McCarthy, or do they only want a safety net? I will not lie. I like having a plan B. I have seen too many seasons die because there was no plan B. But I also know that if you live on plan B, you never become anyone's plan A. And that is how you get stuck in mediocrity. That is the danger. And that is why this story ends the day with weight. Because now it is not only about who arrives, it is about what the Vikings believe about their own future. And that pushes us into a bigger reflection about identity, courage, and choosing a path. I am going to be direct, because all of this together paints a clear picture of where the Vikings are right now. The Tyreek Hill possibility is about dreaming big and taking a real swing in the market. The Jake Browning conversation shows the front office knows it cannot repeat 2025. The pressure on J.J. McCarthy has already become a national debate, and that does not disappear after one good practice. John Randall's voice is a reminder that nostalgia does not win in January, and when a mock draft is already putting Carson Beck on the radar, it is a signal that the plan has to be stronger than ever. My read is simple. The Vikings are at a point where they either jump forward or they keep running in circles, and I am done with circles. So I want your take. Drop it in the comments because this space belongs to everyone who lives and breathes Vikings football. What would you do this offseason with no fear of upsetting anyone? Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings, let's go!